Well, g'day everyone. It's Two Ordinary Cops, and we are back for our second Anzac edition. Damo, what's going on, mate?
Well, yeah, right, mate. It's been very hectic down here. I buried my grandfather. I've wished me wife a happy 40th birthday, and it's been Easter, and we've had cast of thousands. And yeah, no, it's been good, but it's been bloody. It's been a bit hectic, mate.
Well, it has been, yeah, mate. I was down there over the break. Got to catch up with you over a couple of quiet beers, but mate, I think we spent most of the time cooking because more people actually showed up to your wife's birthday than we expected.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, we had a good little production line going, Schultzy. I couldn't have done it without you, mate. It got a bit loose there. People, is there any meat left? There's plenty of meat. We just have to thaw it out and cook it.
Yeah.
So it's all happening. We got them all fed. The feedback's been good.
Yep.
Right.
Hey,
And I think a lot of people in there wouldn't have realised that it was the Two Ordinary Cops podcast catering service.
yeah.
Anyway,
Oh, mate,
yeah,
and we did pull it off as we usually do.
yeah, no,
So,
it was good.
yeah,
It worked well. But mate, obviously because it's over the holidays, it's over Easter, and a lot of people are out and about. There hasn't been a hell of a lot of feedback lately, but that's okay because we got a heap out of the last one. So the previous episode that we spoke about that was inspired by feedback from people.
yep,
And we got more inspiration out of that anyway. So one of the things that one of your people fed back was talking about perks in the job. Do you want to give us a bit more information there, and we can have a yarn about perks in the job?
yeah. So, mate, and part of it was, you're saying whether it's a cup of tea from a little old lady that's appreciative of you doing your work or anything more. And it's funny because he said, I don't want to hear anything that's controversial because obviously I mean, cops get offered stuff all the time. And I think it's important that well, we've had a bit of a discussion before starting this, and we thought, well, how about we talk about corruption, because the
Mm.
police are the one of the most, I suppose, scrutinised organisation when it comes to corruptions, and this is, and look, I will be fair in saying that in the past, yes, the police have been corrupt. However, ourselves, I can guarantee you, were the furthest from corruption I could ever seen. However, there were perks of the job, and so I think it's important that we talk about some of those things.
Yeah, and look, there are perks to every job. So I would even say there are less perks for a copper these days than there are for bloody anybody. I get perks to my job now as a trainer. Like all of our courses are catered. So I get morning tea, lunch, and afternoon tea provided for me every single day of my life. It's part of our contract.
Yep.
So it's part of the contract of the company that the person who we're training provides catering. So I mean, you could look at that and go, well, that's it's a perk. Well, no, it's in a contract. It's agreed upon.
Yep.
So there's a fine line, and I think the pub test would be if a copper turns up. Okay, I'll give you a really good. I mean, God, we'll start off all right. So people talk about what were the perks in the job. Well, I'll go through a few that I received for just doing your job, for just turning up.
Yep.
And I would argue that this would be provided for almost anybody who turned up at these particular places. So the big perks were places, and you can relate to this, cattle stations.
Oh, yes.
So we'd attend cattle stations as part of our job because we'd have to travel long distances out there. There is no Department of Transport anywhere near these places. Quite often they have a lot of vehicles ranging from motorbikes so they want registered on road, or even with just agricultural permits so they can travel on main roads between paddocks, because you've got to remember these places are enormous. You've also then they might have multiple heavy vehicles, multiple station vehicles, all kinds of things. They've got young ringers who want upgrading and licensing, or they might have got someone out who's on a learner's permit or doesn't even have a license. So we've got a lot of government provided administration, gun licensing, all kinds of stuff that goes on out there. And as well as policing, a lot of the time is look, any dramas, any cattle missing, anything like that. I mean, part of it could be that we were conducting inspections on behalf of, the Meat Livestock Australia, but that never happened. It was just never our job really.
Yep.
But all of that perk, we would turn up there. The first thing will happen, we'd sit down and have 3 cups of tea and about 4 pieces of cake before we did anything. We
They're
then rolled
right.
out and worked through it, and they said, "Well, at 12:30, make sure you get back to the homestead because we might have to travel around and do agricultural permits on tractors, God knows what. There's that many vehicles on a cattle station, and they want them all done at once, and they're going to just get one bill from the Department of Transport, and they pay the whole lot in one hit. And so they want it all done and inspected off and signed off by the police because the police were the ones, especially back. This is going back a few years, and I don't think it's changed. I think it's still the main way it's done, but they call it 12:30. Make sure everyone's back. We've got lunch on.
Yep.
Well, lunch was an absolute banquet. Well, they do things beautifully well on most cattle stations out in the bush. And you'd come back to the big old mess, and there'd be everyone who's close by would be back for lunch. You've got to remember these places are absolutely enormous, and
Well, 1
they're
million
good with
acres
people.
on average, Damo, I think, is
How big
actually.
was it?
Yeah, well, I think pretty close to, mate. All the ones that I dealt with, I mean, apart from Wave Hill, which is I think 3.5, but that was separated into three different lots. But most of them were
Yeah,
about 1 million acres.
yeah. So they're colossal. They're the size of shires, really.
Mm,
So as a result, a lot of them, a lot of them now are they're company places, but there are still the odd one that's family owned. But it didn't matter. The service was still outstanding, and a lot of the time, if you were a long way from home and you were right out there in the middle of nowhere, you'd be staying the night. So you'd be staying the night, and come knock off time, if about 4 or 5 o'clock, they go right. Well, everyone's down in tools. Blokes don't have to keep registering vehicles into the night. Tomorrow's a whole new day and you would have worked pretty hard. You're traveling out, you're crawling underneath vehicles, you're checking off things. When I say work hard, it's all relative, I suppose. But it was a great trip. It was fantastic. Like it was a really good. They were brilliant little trips away, and you got to really
yep.
network and meet everyone and carry on. But they talk about perks, mate. Lunch was a banquet. You would have paid hundreds of dollars in a flash restaurant for what we ate for lunch. You could barely move in the afternoon, so you got precisely bugger all done. And then come knock off time, you could barely stomach something else. Whereas 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're shoving a gold can down your throat,
Oh,
very very
yeah.
quickly followed by another 30 odd.
Yep.
So it was there were and it was an insult if you went to pay for them. So I mean, they talk about perks of the job. Yeah, they were perks of the job, but the balance comes. They would have done the same thing for a builder out there who's building another building somewhere, yeah, or someone installing big irrigation stuff, that's a pretty common contract. So
Yep.
if someone was out there contracting for a couple of days or whatever else, they would be the same. It would be all turned on, all the grog you can drink, all the food you can eat, it's on.
Yep.
It's just the way it's done in the bush a lot of the time. But I mean, that's one example I've sort of got. If you want to spot
Yeah,
out and
well,
sort of talk
mate,
about
you're
perks for
exactly
that.
right. And I think I mentioned it once before, like Supplejack, and mate, my hats off to these guys. They were the most genuine people you could ever meet. They give you the shirt off their back if that was the last shirt they owned. And they were just fantastic people, and I will admit that I think I drank them out of alcohol, but they kept on feeding it to me, so I kept on drinking it. But like some of the most wonderful people, and you know what? Did we sign off their vehicles because they did that? No.
No, and that's my next point. But you keep going with your story, and that's yeah. Sorry, keep going.
Hmm. So the thing is, people sit there and go, "Oh, they're doing this to get a favor." No, it's not about that. It's about showing hospitality to people. They know how much we've gone out of our way of our day to day duties. And look, what you got to remember is we've got a lot of stuff going on back at the station. Police work never stops. It actually builds up while you're away
Yeah,
doing this sort of stuff, and they appreciate your time in coming out there and helping them.
yeah,
Um,
and I think it went back. This particular example being the remote area stuff and cattle stations, especially. I think that was just the culture of the cattle stations. It wouldn't
It
have mattered who
was.
you were, but I mean, if you wanted to go by the absolute letter of the law for police and our policy, we would have realistically had to turn all that down. We should have self catered. We should have
Yes.
taken all our own food with us.
Yep.
We should have taken all our own alcohol with us. And I would even say that would breach a different policy, which is to fit in and work with your community and adapt to their customs and traditions as best as possible, which is,
Yep.
in Aboriginal culture, we definitely do adapt to Aboriginal culture away from the traditional policing role. So
Yep.
why shouldn't we do it with the culture that is surrounding cattle stations? The
Yep.
fact of the matter is, if you get a visitor on a cattle station, they just do not ask for it. You don't ask for anything; you get given everything.
Yep.
So that's just the way it is. That's just the culture of the place, and they get offended if you don't accept. And fair, it's just a tradition, goes back a very long time. They'll be
Yeah.
offended if you don't take their hospitality. But then on the flip side, I think about us back in, especially Borroloola, where we both worked in Borroloola,
Yep.
where our place was. We had a good sized yard. It was about an acre block at that little back corner of the police compound. So we had lots of room there. There were plenty of times where I said to tradies, boys, just park it. If you don't want your vehicles out the front, they had their own accommodation sorted. And it's only walking distance. God, it wouldn't have been a kilometre away, but I used to give them a lift anyway.
Yeah.
I said to them, park your vehicles inside the compound. And if you really want, just park them down in my yard. No dramas, like not worried at all because the compound was still accessible. So yeah, we'd park vehicles inside behind my gate, and I did that with tradies out there. They were comms techs out there sorting out communications at the school and the police station at the same time, and I think the clinic as well. So I just said, leave your vehicles there; they'll be completely safe. They were worried about tools being stolen off the back of their vehicles, and then I just load a few of them up in my car or the police car and run them back down to their accommodation, which was really only a kilometre away. So it was give and take. So to me, they talk about the perks of the job. Well, yeah, there were perks out in the bush, especially
Yep.
about being a police officer, but the perks were sort of given to everybody. So I
Oh.
don't know if it was a perk or not.
Well, mate, it's and look, I will mention this, and I'll say Dippery Barra Lodge. If you ever get a chance to go to Dippery, I allowed them. I was a sergeant of Ramangini at the time, and they were running a Barra Lodge. It was about half an hour by boat. Um, but part of the thing and part of the danger, the police, and I would look throw. I'm going to throw this on police responsibility. We are there to reduce crime. And so one of the things, like they were having to leave their cars down at the boat ramp, which is 26 k's out of Ramangini. It's on a remote place where people were going through left, right, and centre, and you're talking about drug dealers or carver and dealing and all that sort of thing. So their property was unguarded, and I said to them, "Keep it on the Ramangini police station. We'll drop you down. We'll drop your boats down, and you keep your gear, your cars, your trailer." And everything because we had a massive compound. And
Yeah,
I said, we'll just park it up here. We'll look after it. Look, it's probably not kosher within the policy and procedure. However, I was reducing crime by not allowing people to, have access to this stuff because they would be away for months.
mate, I would bet my life savings that any of those vehicles left there for longer than 2 days would have been completely and utterly pillaged and probably burnt.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So, and this is like, so more than, yep, like all the time, I would sit there and go, mate, we will actually do one better. We will drive down and we will drive your vehicle back to the station.
yeah.
So, and look, that's community policing. It's community. That's how community look after community because, and we've spoken about the bonuses or the advantage of working in some of these places when you're doing a serious investigation. You spoke of one, south of Tennant Creek, where you had to go, and the amount of people that actually stood up and looked after whether it was something to eat or this, that, and the other while you're doing that investigation. The community helps out to get a job done.
Oh, yeah, mate, yeah, absolutely. And that's so it's almost we're talking about the perks, and I think what we're going to move on to in a minute is talking about where that line kicks in.
Yes.
So, do these people want anything back in particular for what we're doing? I mean, we're out there in the middle of nowhere. It's just legitimately human beings being good human beings to other people who are doing a tough job out in the middle of nowhere with pretty trying circumstances, and that's how policing generally was.
Yep.
Um, the difference would be if I go out to say, the example there was Malapanya Springs Station outside of Borroloola, so on the Tablelands Highway down south of Borroloola. Had I gone out there and gone, not even going to inspect your vehicles, boys, bring them all in, sling us $1,000,
Yeah.
or that's dead obvious. But
Oh,
what
yeah.
about sling us a beast? And so, for those who don't know what a beast is, so sling us a whole cow, basically. So basically, a year's supply of meat, and this, and maybe a couple of bottles of rum. And okay, that there is corruption.
Yes.
But the perk is going out there and you're still doing your job. And if I find a problem, I'm going to go, oh, mate, I'm sorry, I can't sign this one off.
Yeah.
And it would be, yeah, no worries. So there is no payment to the police for with expectation of return. So
Yes.
I mean, this is just hospitality. It's good hospitality, which we would return to anybody who was in town. It's just the way it was done in the bush. And this is where, in the bush, is where it can be slippery because you are the only person there. You are the only cop. You're not, oh, g'day, Sarge, or whatever. It's, g'day, Damo, how are you? G'day, Schutzy, how you going, boys? You know these people. They potentially within your social group.
Yep.
It can be more challenging at times to actually challenge their behavior if it's out of line. And that's where it might be that you have to cut a friendship if it's not an appropriate friendship to have. If this
Yep.
person is continually engaging in conduct that's against the law. So, I
Yeah.
mean, that becomes pretty obvious, but in small places, you just don't know sometimes. And anyway, I think police get pretty good at dealing with that stuff down the track. You sort of know who to hang out with and who not to. But
Yeah.
in major centres, Schultzy, it's a little bit different in major
Hey,
centres.
mate, can I just tell a story from out bush? You've
Yeah,
just
yeah.
track there. Like I'm just going to put a couple of instances where, and these are things where people have done favors for us, of course, because only, because we were doing our work and they've given us a free meal or, this, that, and the other, or even like the council out there. Honestly, if we wanted to say a shipping container moved as part of the police, apart getting through the rigmarole of getting the police department to do it was an absolute head fuck. So what you do is just go, look, can you move this from here to here, and this will be done. Because when you're out bush, especially with those the Themis on the day,
Yeah.
it was hard to get that sort of stuff done. And these people did it off their own back, and they did it because they appreciate the police being there, this, that, and the other. That doesn't mean that there was one I had to actually charge with failure to secure a firearm. He
Yeah.
was a bloke, an absolute top bloke. However, part of the reason was his kid had got a hold of the firearm one day. I had to make sure my crew were, in bulletproof vests when we went down to this job and all that sort of thing. And I said, mate, as much as I like you, unfortunately, the law's been breached. And look, he was respectful of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, he copped on the chin because he goes, no, I completely understand where you're coming from. And I explained, I said, mate, this is the way we have to roll. There's been instances where, they called me up going, oh, such and such caught drink driving. I said, well, they've been caught drink driving. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
That's
the end of that. What do you want me
unfortunate.
to
Yep.
do?
Yep.
Go and break him out of jail?
Yeah.
What do
Yeah,
you
that's
think we
right.
are?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is also, I think where it comes from our perspective, it was our mates because the police had, this is what I talk about camaraderie. I wasn't going to go against my mates. They
No.
had locked that person up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is a thing where they talk about, oh no, it breeds corruption. Well, it also breeds anti-corruption.
Yeah. I think where it gets slippery is where, and this is what I think this is the transition. Okay, we've spoken about this perks. Yeah,
Yep.
sure. You go to a cattle station, get this, do whatever else. In the regional centres, Christmas Day, we've spoken about that. The local shop would come down with a big platter of food or whatever else for the
Yes.
police. Well,
Yep.
guess where else got one? The ambulance, the
Yeah.
hospital,
Yeah.
all these other places, anything that was still working over Christmas or whatever else, they would get this big platter. It was just what the local business wanted to do. McDonald's have got a worldwide policy that law enforcement, basically first responders and military, get half off, 50% discount on McDonald's.
Yes.
Well, our commissioner, who ended up going to jail himself, tried to strike all that down. So John McRoberts in about 2010 tried to tell McDonald's that they weren't allowed to give his police officers a discount, as it was
Yep.
viewed as corruption. And what I found hilarious was McDonald's Australia headquarters basically turned around and told him to stick it up his ass. They'll do whatever they like. So
Yep.
it came down to, we don't expect anything in return. We just put out that this is just a company policy, and we don't give a shit what you think. If a police officer
Exactly.
comes in, we will charge them 50%. That's it.
And Damo, the irony in that is the fact that Mick Roberts, his own
Mm.
police force, put him in jail for corruption.
That's right. Yeah, exactly right. So it was just ridiculous. I mean, the thing was that Macca's was a convenient place to go because it's open 24/7, and it was a good spot to grab a mad,
It
just
was.
quick snack in the middle of the night. It's just rubbish food. I'm not endorsing McDonald's, but
Yeah.
it was always quick and easy and handy, and for us it was always pretty good. But then the other thing was you get your 50% off, which was always a bit of a helping hand. But that
Yep.
was their thing. And don't get me wrong, the Ambos were the same. Anyone in the Defence Force was the same. If they turned up there in uniform on duty, they were given 50% discount too. So
Yep.
it was just a policy that they had. Did it get taken advantage of? Yeah. And if a police officer was to be off duty and whack a uniform on and drive down and walk in there in a uniform and buy a whole heap of Maccas for their family or whatever else and get 50% off, and that was to be detected in an investigation, they would most definitely lose their job for corruption. Because the definition of corruption is basically using your position of authority in order to gain yourself a personal
Yes.
chattel. So, in order to basically gain some kind of benefit, you're using your position. So that's what it is. I mean, the fact was that you could exchange favor for a benefit. So you in your official capacity may not carry out the correct behavior because someone's paid you. Well, that's corruption. That is
Mm.
dead set corruption. I think most people understand this. The classic example was Fitzgerald Inquiry, Queensland, in 1987. It was kicked off, went from there.
Yes, that's correct.
So basically, you've got laws in Queensland that outlawed um, illegal gambling. So there was SB bookies in illegal gambling, prostitution, all these kinds of, all your vices, all those, what Las Vegas is famous for. A lot of that was illegal in a lot of different places in Queensland. But what was happening was, and without quoting the whole bloody Fitzgerald inquiry, which I couldn't do accurately anyway,
Yep.
they the police were going in at a higher level to these organised crime people and actually creating a bit of a conspiracy with them so that they were left alone to carry out their conduct as long as the money flowed back to the police. So it was just basically the police were organising the organised crime. It was a
Yeah.
pretty shameful state of affairs. Queensland weren't exclusive to that. It occurred definitely in New South Wales. The
New
Wood Royal
South Wales,
Commission also
definitely.
exposed
Yep.
it. There's been lots of places it's occurred. I guarantee, just because other places haven't had royal commissions, that there was. I would swear on my grave that there was corruption in a lot of other places. But I
Yep.
will swing back and say it now, and that I'm very, very confident that there is a very low level of high level corruption now in police forces around, especially Australia and New Zealand. And
Oh,
that's because the oversight is just so full on. You just
we
couldn't
are
do it.
we are and look, I think I've said it before. We are far more scrutinised than politicians.
Oh my God, like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
The scrutiny of police is just incredible. Yeah, it's
Like
um,
the amount of politicians, or that come out and actually sit there and go talk about police corruption. I sit there and go, well, look at yourself. You guys, we have ticks. We
checks
have
and
boxes.
balances.
We have ticks. Yeah, like there's balances. We get investigated at the smallest inkling of a complaint.
Yeah.
Um, whereas, and honestly, that we get dragged over the coals even when we're right.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
whereas politicians, mate, the problem is the people we're investigating politicians are put in there by politicians.
yeah. I mean, we don't want to go off on a side tangent too much. We're just talking about what we used to go on with. But I agree with you. There's
Mm.
there's a lot of freedom there, and I had I applied for a couple of jobs a couple of years back here in New South Wales with other government departments in emergency management, and I got it through some back channels that my God, you were the pick of them, but they had this person already picked out. Well, that's cronyism, and that's a level that's corruption.
Yeah.
So, geez, didn't the commissioner of police just get sacked in the Northern Territory for the exact same thing?
Yep.
Putting a friend of his in as the assistant commissioner. So the police force is extremely scrutinised. I would say the scrutiny in, I mean, private enterprise can do what they want because the consequences are you go broke. It's not that you don't have statutory authority, and that's the difference. So it's no, you've got to act within the law. So private enterprise can act lawfully, but they can provide benefits and choose whatever contractor they want to do us all this sort of stuff, whatever they want to do, because at the end of the day, they're private enterprise. But when you're in charge of the taxpayers' money for a contract, or you're in charge of dishing out government licenses or government registrations or things like that, you don't own that. You can't sell that as your own product. So as a result, you've got to be very, very squeaky clean in the way you dish out those registrations, dish out those licenses,
Yep.
give those approvals, give out that grant money, approve those contracts. It must be extremely transparent because you are just a piece of the machine that is carrying out the role of government. If you want to pay off whoever you want and have whatever contract they want and do whatever you want in your job, then you need to start your own company and you can do whatever the hell you want. But the consequence will be that you go broke.
Yeah.
So if you're a successful business, you can do whatever you like. It's why a lot of rich businessmen go, "I don't care. Like it's my business. I'm not going to go broke." It's like I don't care if you don't like the way I do business. What I do is lawful and go away, and that's fine as long as you conduct yourself in a lawful fashion in private enterprise. No issue. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think the big problem comes in when you're dealing with the public purse. That's where you must be held to a high account. You don't own that stuff, even though it may feel when you do it for a very long time like you do. You never ever own it. It's not yours. You're getting paid to carry out the function of government.
Yeah, and I think that's it. The important thing is there, and it was one of the things my uncle wrote as part of my reference when I went to join the NT Police, and he said my moral compass was very high, and and that's so like the moral compass. And look, I did get accused of corruption. I remember one time I was actually out doing a search in relation to Carver, and one of the old elders obviously got the shits because we were hammering his house because they were selling carver out of that place and they were making hundreds of, well, they weren't making hundreds of thousands, but the Tongans were making hundreds of thousands out of it. And I didn't like anybody getting, and they were getting used by the Tongans. And one of the old elders actually cracked up and said, "Oh, no, you keep this money, rah rah." And I actually really got the shits with them because that was an attack on me personally. Not so much me as a department or me as a police officer, but me personally because I honestly I can tell you corruption was the lowest thing on my level. I always acted in the best of the community. Um, and I remember going off at him, and even his family came up to me and goes, Ben, it's all right, it's all right. He didn't mean that." And I said, "No," I said, "This is wrong." I said, "The fact is, I've always acted in your best interests."
Yeah.
And I got really pissed off about it, and I think that's why I really hate when people say the police are corrupt these days. And like Damo, honestly, mate, I and even if you talk about high level corruption, I never saw anything high level.
Oh, mate, I never saw anything low level. Like
No,
it
well, that's
just
right.
can't exist. You just go, dude, don't you like your job? Like you
Yeah,
go, people were doing silly things. There was times where there's also managerial things where people are learning their trade and they're starting to get a bit confident and they're starting. It's like, oh, you
yep,
pull your head back in. And I'm not talking about gifts and benefits. I'm talking more about, someone might be a bit heavy handed or something like that.
yes,
We're not talking straight out legitimate assault. We're just talking a bit heavy handed. You go like, oi, just pull your head in. Like, this is not you. You just that uniform. There's a reason you're only a number. because the police force is a big public owned entity. You don't
Yes.
get to, of course you have your influence, and you can really be a good copper, and you can have a great time in it, and leave a hell of a legacy within the police force. But at the end of the day, you're being paid to do your job as a basically a kind of public servant, and you don't own it. You don't get to sell it. You don't get to trade it.
No.
It's not yours to give away. So that's where the corruption comes.
Yeah.
The perks of turning up and being and receiving excellent hospitality. Well, you know, people can argue back and forth that that's not necessarily corruption. Well, by the letter of the law, it is. If you've turned up out there and received a gift, I think the big test for me was always, am I receiving this in anticipation of something in return?
Yes.
And the
Yeah.
fact of the matter was no, because I'd go out there and go, oh, boys, you need. I said that trailer over there. I did it a few times. I mean, the vehicles were always in pretty good nick. But you go, fellas, I can't sign that trailer off. The tyres on the back. There's a few places where the wires coming through. Like you need probably 6 or 7 new tyres on that particular trailer. And they go, yeah, no, fair call, no worries.
Mm.
And then you'd go, look, I'll sign the whole thing off and have it sitting here. You send me photos with time date stamps on them of the replaced photos, and I'll sign it off, and you're good to go. So
Yep.
there were ways around it. You got to remember, they're in the middle of nowhere. They're trying to run a business. We're not going to get out there very often. We get out there a couple of times a year at best. We do the best we can, but there was no expectation of them going, oh, come on, mate, just sign it off. We'll slip a few extra beers. That there is that's
Yeah.
corruption.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
what I loved was there was no dramas. It was just, oh, fellas, that trailer, I can't sign that off, but I can sign. Oh, what else you got? We'll move on. Oh, well, there's a way around it. We'll get it sorted in a practical solution, but I can't authorise that to be on the road right now, because if you've got a full load of cattle going on the road and those 5 tyres blow, that rolls over and kills a family. The investigation goes back through. Well, for one, forget the investigation. I know in my heart of hearts that I signed that off, and that trailer's just killed a family coming the other way.
Yep.
Sorry, not happening. So, the other thing is people go, oh yeah, but this, that, the other. Well, no worries. We'll put your family in that car, and that's always the test. Okay, if you're happy to sacrifice people, you sacrifice your own people first,
Yeah.
not someone else's. So,
Yeah, and look, that used to happen quite regularly, and I'll actually go on a slightly different track there. Like we used to pull people over, and it could be something where like their car's slightly out of registration, or they're driving, but they actually, well, one of the biggest ones for me was the fact that they could get a license, or all this sort of stuff. And I said, well, look, I can give you a fine right now, which is going to be more than you actually getting this qualification. I'm going to give you 2 weeks. You don't drive now, but I'm going to give you 2 weeks. You come back to me with qualification. I won't do you for this
yeah,
because you're actually eligible completely to come and do it, and it'd be cheaper for you to actually do that.
yeah, to do your
I mean,
license.
I'll
Yeah,
tell you what, if I don't see proof in 2 weeks, this file's going in.
yeah, you're going to court. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
and flip it back in their court. And that's I mean, that's not corruption at all. It's a bush way of managing your community, and trying to get people to do the right thing. Like, here's the deal. We can hold this back on the
yep,
proviso we do this, and the fact of the matter is, if it went through, it'd probably be considered, oh, no, that's not lawful. You can't, under what law do you do that? And that, no, it's like, I'm managing my community.
yep. Damo, in
You know,
fact, it's actually called discretion.
that's right. There's
And that
definitely
is
discretion.
something, and police forces, unfortunately, I suppose more recently, have tried to get rid of discretion because I think it breeds corruption. It doesn't.
Yeah, no,
It just allows you to be good with the community, and they will respect you for your decisions. And what this is why the importance, and why Damo and I have actually spoken about getting the right people in the job,
yeah,
in recruitment and all that, because if they have the right moral compass, you will actually get a police force that led by really good people.
yeah. So you're right there, mate. And the fact is that you imagine AI robots being police?
Oh,
Can you imagine? It'd be the community would, as humans, would turn on the other humans who are at the top running the place and try and destroy those things, because it's like, you don't just get to control us with your machines. It's like, we've elected you to bring in laws, and those laws are enforced by people. and those people take into consideration all kinds of things, and as a result, and bring out the best result. Now that should always be up for scrutiny, and that, of course. However, the fact is you can't beat a, a local copper, especially in smaller places, using discretion that can be backed up and justified and would pass the pub test, for want of a better term,
Yep.
um, in order to improve their community, or give a young person a break who would otherwise just go to court and do this and do that, and then be disenfranchised, and potentially go further down that track. There's a lot of scope for a human level interaction here, and this is where lawyers forget this stuff. I mean, they just go, "Well, I've got to win for my client, so well, this, and 1 + 2 = 3, and you're wrong," and judges will find that, yeah, well, that's correct, and the humanity is removed from it, and that's a lot of what is wrong with, you talk. Oh my god, you get the old saying, or I remember the old days where you'd be playing up and the old local sergeant give you a kick up the ass and send you home. As well, if I grabbed a juveniles now and kicked them up the ass, I'd go to jail for assault. Like, it's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
it
That's
can't
right.
happen. We put them through some kind of approved program where it takes months to happen, so there's no sense of consequence, and then they just go, why am I back here? I thought this was all dealt with. It's the old punishment for kids was instant, and it was an instant fix for the problem they were committing or the issue that was occurring at the time, without being detrimental to their ongoing improvement, their ongoing employment, and their life and their livelihood in the future. So I don't know. It's corruption is true corruption to me is quite obvious. It's like you're exchanging your position of authority, which isn't yours. You're being paid to hold that position of authority.
Yep.
You're exchanging that position of authority for your own personal gain outside of what you make from your wage and your salary, which is legitimate remuneration for your conduct, for your work.
Mm.
So it's not yours to sell. If you want to go and sell your own stuff and sell your services and do whatever else, well, you've got to go into private enterprise, and that's why corruption rules exist. And I don't disagree with it. I think it's a good thing. The trouble is the scrutiny gets so full on that it's like, oh, for God's sake, this is a human interaction. What benefit did they receive from me for giving me a bloody free coffee, or whatever else? And that's where it muddies the water. I think that it's at the lower end where these little conversations come into play. And yeah, anyway, I think that's what we're on about.
Yeah, well, definitely, mate. Look, I'm just going to mention one thing here. I've got a question later on in my career. Basically, we've been working for 2 weeks with about 2 hours sleep a night, and we were on stand down, having basically because unless it was an actually dire emergency, Collins were not going to call us out.
Mm,
And the duty super was the one that called this because we were just so overworked. And anyway, I got a personal phone call, but it was on a sat phone where somebody was stranded out at sea. And anyway, of course I got woken up in a start because I'm trying to sleep, trying to catch up on any sleep I could possibly get. And yeah, and it was a guy. And anyway, I assessed the situation. I go, all right, okay. And he knew my personal because I'm friends with him.
mm,
And rah, rah, and yep, okay. I said, all right, you're stuck out here, and I'm just thinking all the ways that they could get saved. Because they were actually quite a few nautical miles out to sea.
mm,
And do you know in these remote locations, there's not a lot of availability to get other agencies to take care of this. And anyway, I've sat there and gone, all right, leave with me. And so I just went through the proper channels. I called the duty super. I said, this situation, look, I'm allowing it up to you. I wanted it approved at a higher level because I'm going to get paid overtime and I know we're on stand down and all this sort of thing. However,
mm,
we can actually do this job and get it done and make sure people are safe and blah, blah. What really shit me out of all, and yes, it did get approved, and I went out there, and it was probably rightfully so. I went through those extra channels because, I mean, technically, I was justifying what I had to do. But it didn't stop me getting questioned about it,
no.
and that it really pissed me off because the fact is, I'd actually gone through the higher channels to make sure that everything was legitimate because my concern wasn't actually because he was a mate. My concern was if we didn't act and they something happened, like bad weather, and they capsized and they died and all that sort of thing, I'd never forgive myself. Or whether it was a mate or not, I would have never have actually ever forgiven myself.
No,
So,
no, you're right, and that's the thing. Is like you've made the call that you need to go, and it's people questioning your integrity on that, and that gets
mm,
personal. But it's sort of I think there's two parts of it here. Is like if you can tell as a senior police officer investigating this, if you can tell that the person who or the police officer who has made this decision is acting in good faith and not acting in such a way that is going to bring them, benefits and rewards,
mm,
then surely you can see that. And then if you really want to conduct an investigation, get onto the guy who called you out and go, what was the go?
mm,
What's going on here? If you suspect that they've conspired together to create a situation where you're going to get called out, I mean that's a lot of effort to go for a couple of hours of bloody overtime.
and especially, mate, I just wanted to fucking sleep.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's the big thing. It's like, are you kidding me? How about you pay me just to stay in bed? So yeah, no, I get that. It's like people, oh, well, geez, you were out again. You were called out another call out. That's a lot of overtime. It's like, yeah, I know it's a lot of overtime. Do you know what
Yeah,
I would rather have done? Nothing. I would rather
exactly.
have been asleep in bed. By that stage, the money didn't matter. Like
Yep.
that goes on a bit. But
It's
yeah, look,
yeah, and that's what it was for me. I'm going, mate. I was well beyond what I could actually almost physically do.
yeah. No,
But
I think, mate. I think the big one here is that this is where the grey, blurry line between what is just a normal interaction, acceptable, and I love that term, the pub test, because if you're going out in the middle of the bush and they provide you with a really good meal and you stay the night and they provide you with a heap of grog and you have a really good time and all the rest of it, well, out in the bush, the expectation is if they were to come to my house, the same thing would happen to them. It's
yep,
just that's just hospitality. If they were going to give me, oh, here's 2 bottles of rum to sign off this whole truck, that is corruption. Straight
yes,
away, you are selling your authority for your own benefit. And that's the line. So it can be low level. It can be something as simple as that. And like, oh, come on, man. Don't worry about this. I mean, this is pretty obvious. And the other thing is, it's pretty, yeah, you occasionally get these, especially from I've noticed this in not in a racist way, but I noticed low end bribe attempts where I got a lot in Darwin from um, people from overseas, either third world country immigrants or tourists trying to go. Oh, he's okay. He's $100. Finish with you. Finish with you. I was like, yeah, no, it doesn't work like that. Sorry, mate, you're in Australia. Look,
yep,
there was very clumsy levels at bribery that used to occur from international people mostly. And then I sort of would have seen that there would have been attempts, and I can certainly see it would have happened in the licensing arena back in the day, where people would have tried, oh, we'll leave this alone and we'll give you this kind of benefit or whatever it else. But where the corruption kicks in is where you take a benefit in order for your authority to be tempered in such a way to the benefit of the person giving you the benefit, and that's
yep,
dead set corruption. And
yep.
yeah, I think that's what we're getting at.
Exactly. Look, mate, I'm actually gonna mention something. It
Mm.
might be a little bit controversial and all that sort of thing, but look, it didn't happen often. However, I remember when I was out at Ramo, I got a couple of Kiwi cops that worked under me, and I it took me a long time to get adopted into an Aboriginal family because I mean probably because I was straight down the line and all that sort of thing. However, they actually came to me and they said, "Oh, their family want to adopt me," and I said, "Well, one thing you have to be careful of, they could be doing it for a benefit.
Yeah.
So what they do is they do it for a benefit to them, and they adopt you as and means they'll back you up." And I said, "This is a very dangerous path you're heading down." So, and look, this I'm saying this because any information for people that work in Aboriginal, and look, it doesn't mean that every person, every Aboriginal family who wants to adopt you is doing this,
No,
but
of course not. Yeah.
it just means that you've got to keep an open mind in relation to this, because some do it. People, it, you, people are not always innocent, and they're not always, anti-corruption and all this sort of thing. So you've just got to be wary as soon as people offer you a benefit. And
Yeah,
being adopted by an Aboriginal family is a big thing.
yeah, it is. Yeah,
So you've got to, and there's times, and some people will use it to their advantage. So you just got to be
yeah,
wary of
definitely.
that.
And yeah, I agree, totally agree with that. I've seen it firsthand. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely. Well, mate, I think we've fleshed that out a little bit. I mean, this is obviously not a royal commission into police corruption. This is just us, two ordinary cops, sort of, I think, ironing out the grey area where the two separate. And there's a little bit of a crossover in the middle where something might be appropriate one day and not the next. And
Yeah.
that's up to you to be aware of it. And we're talking mostly to the police now, like to the police officers out there. You know, there's a time where you go, no, I smell a rat here. Like, this is not, this little gift or benefit is not being given in good faith. Like
That's
someone
right.
turning up with a platter of food on Christmas Day because they just, oh, we really appreciate what you do. It's given to whoever happens to be on duty. It's got nothing to do with, oh, I'm giving this to Schultzy. It's just
Yes.
whoever is on duty on Christmas Day is going to have this cheese platter or whatever it is. You know, that's a pretty innocent thing, especially when they've also given one to the paramedics, the hospital, the bloody whoever else is open. So,
Right.
you know, that's pretty innocent. But if they're coming to you and slipping you a bottle of rum and saying, "Hey, listen, just don't be, just turn the other way when you drive past this pub on this day," you know.
That's
So
yes.
and that's the lower end. Obviously, the upper end is everyone knows what they're on about when they're at the higher levels, getting hundreds of thousands of dollars into a trust account somewhere, which which I mean that's major crime. That's major and organised crime at that point. So that used to happen a lot back in the day. I think it would be very very difficult to do that now, given the level of scrutiny.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, it's that more that low end thing, and I think it's pretty obvious to those with half a brain, and certainly the ones who can pass a psych test to get into the police force, or at least an intelligence test. When there's someone attempting to pay you off for a minor assistance, and
Yes.
you don't have the authority to sell that authority. So I think
No.
that's my takeaway there.
I think actually it comes down to, and we've spoken about sports clubs and all that sort of thing. The jersey is earned, and I think the uniform is earned.
Yeah, bloody oath.
It's not yours to own; it's
No,
yours to earn it.
you're just wearing it.
Yep.
That's all it
Yep.
is.
Yep. That's
Good
right.
on you,
And
mate. I think that'll work.
I
That
think
sort of
so.
sums up. I think we got our message across. I'm not sure. Give us some feedback. I'm really interested to hear about this. I want to hear some stories from coppers, but I think more interestingly, I want to hear from the public. I want to hear what people think because people go, "Oh, coppers are on the take." It's like how? How are coppers on the take? They're that scrutinised. It's not funny. So anyway, yeah, no. If
Yeah.
you've got something to say, bloody let us know. We'd love to know.
Definitely, mate. I'll back you up on that because the
Mm,
fact is, like, yeah, people say that all the time. You
yeah,
shouldn't think it will justify it. Like,
yeah,
yeah, bring us the evidence
yeah.
and
Bloody
show
oath.
us.
I'll go
And
and arrest the bastard. Well, not anymore because I don't have arrest
well,
powers.
exactly. Yeah, we'll
But
do a citizen's arrest on him.
yeah, yep. No, exactly right.
But yeah, because look, I think this is a big thing, and especially for the police officers out there. And I know probably a lot of them would have the shits with it. So get in contact with us and let us know what you think.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right, mate. You want to sign it off?
I will. All right. This is Two Ordinary Cops, and we're signing off for this week. We'll catch you
Oh, we
next
are.
week.
And sorry, well, I just should say it is. This will be released on Anzac Day. So,
Oh, yes.
oh, you don't say Happy Anzac Day, but everybody get out there and get around Anzac Day. It's a very important day for us.
It
Um, celebrate with your mates and think about those who've given all.
exactly. And by all, we mean like their life. And there's
Yeah,
a lot, I spend my Anzac Day remembering those that have given their life or even even whether they've died or whether it's their mental health
yeah,
to actually,
giving their
to,
limb or their brain. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So, yeah, thank you. Thank you to all those that have served.
Absolutely. All right, mate. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. See ya.